Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be looking into AI,
Oh, interesting.
specifically deepfakes.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
we're going to be looking at a recent case with Scarlett Johansson and a few other Jewish celebrities.
Okay, yeah, I think this is such a fascinating topic because it really highlights the larger conversation we need to be having about AI's potential
Right.
and how it can be misused. And really, it comes down to the question, how do we balance ethical considerations with all the cool innovation that's happening?
Yeah, and it feels like that balance is constantly in motion
It is.
as technology gets better and better.
Yeah.
So before we get into the weeds here, can you explain to our listeners what exactly are deepfakes?
Yeah, so a deepfake is basically a video that has been altered using artificial intelligence.
Okay.
And this AI tech lets you replace a person's likeness with someone else's.
So you're essentially putting like someone else's face
Right.
on someone else's body.
Exactly.
I got it.
And what's even more concerning is that the technology behind this is getting more and more sophisticated. And it's becoming increasingly accessible.
So theoretically, anyone with the know-how and the tools could create a deepfake video.
Potentially, yes.
Wow.
And we see deepfakes being used in all sorts of ways, from entertainment, those funny parody videos that you see online, to more malicious purposes like spreading misinformation and propaganda.
Right, and that brings us to the incident with Scarlett Johansson.
Yes.
So this wasn't just a random celebrity being targeted. There was a context here, right?
Absolutely. This particular deepfake was linked to Kanye West's anti-Semitic comments.
Right.
And it was basically trying to counter those comments by featuring several celebrities, including Johansson, seemingly opposing those views. However, the method itself, using AI-generated images without consent, that raises a lot of ethical questions.
So the person who made this video, who claims to be a generative AI expert, thought they were kind of fighting fire with fire.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the case.
But as you said, it's a slippery slope.
Very much so.
When we start using somebody's image without their permission, even if we think it's for a good cause, where do we draw the line?
Exactly, and I'm sure many people would agree with that.
And Scarlett Johansson, she didn't just stay quiet about this,
No, not at all.
did she?
She released a statement condemning the video and expressed a lot of concern about the potential of misusing AI to spread hate.
Yeah. And, she's been pretty vocal about this. Didn't she have that whole thing with OpenAI last year
Yes, she did.
where they used a voice very similar to hers for ChatGPT, and she threatened legal action?
That's right, she did.
It seems like she's really been paying attention to this for a while now.
It seems so, yeah. Her experiences really highlight this gap that we're seeing. The ethical considerations surrounding AI just aren't keeping pace with how fast the technology is developing.
Right.
And that's a major concern, not just for people like Scarlett Johansson,
Yeah.
but for society as a whole.
Yeah. It's scary to think about the potential for harm. So we keep hearing this phrase, generative AI.
Right.
What exactly does that mean?
So generative AI is a specific type of artificial intelligence, and it's all about creating new content. Things like images or text, audio, even video.
Wow.
And the fact that the person who made this video was an expert in this area really just underscores how accessible this technology is becoming.
So this isn't just some, teenager in their basement playing around with some software.
Right.
This is someone with actual expertise creating this content.
Exactly. And that makes the potential consequences so much more serious. We're not talking about these blurry, obviously fake videos anymore.
Right.
Deepfakes are getting incredibly realistic.
So what can we do about it? I mean, every day there seems to be something new, some new line crossed between reality and fabrication.
Well, awareness is key. The more people understand what deepfakes are,
Yeah.
how they're created, and how they can be used, the better equipped we are to spot them and to question the authenticity of what we see online.
So we need to always be skeptical.
In a sense.
Oh, but the technology is always advancing.
It is, absolutely.
It feels like an arms race.
In some ways, it is, and there's no easy fix.
Okay.
We need a multifaceted approach that combines, advancements in technology with strong legal frameworks and clear ethical guidelines.
So it's not just about the tech itself.
Yeah,
It's about the choices we make as a society,
absolutely.
how we regulate things, how we choose to interact with this technology.
Right. We need to be active participants in shaping the future of AI, not passive observers just letting it happen.
Okay, so we talked about what deepfakes are,
Yeah.
how they're made, and we talked about this incident with Scarlett Johansson.
You did.
And we talked about the need for a balanced approach to AI development.
Mm-hmm.
What's the global response been like? Are there countries trying to regulate this technology?
There are definitely efforts being made globally to tackle this. For instance, the UK has been pretty proactive, especially when it comes to advertising. Their Advertising Standards Authority has taken a strong stance against using deepfakes in ads without clear disclosure.
So they're setting some boundaries.
They are.
What about other parts of the world? Is anyone else taking this seriously?
Absolutely. The European Union is another example. They're currently developing some pretty comprehensive AI regulations. And they're looking at a wide range of concerns: data privacy, potential bias in algorithms, the impact on jobs, and of course, the ethical side of things.
It sounds like they're really thinking this through.
They are.
What about the U.S.? What's been happening closer to home?
Well, compared to those examples, the U.S. has been slower to enact comprehensive AI legislation. There have been some initiatives at the state level, but federal legislation has been lagging behind.
Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a lot of concern that strict regulations might stifle innovation and put U.S. tech companies at a disadvantage. And there's also debate about the best way to go about it. Should it be industry-led, or should the government take a more active role?
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot to consider there.
Yeah.
So we have these different approaches to AI regulation.
Right.
Some countries are being more proactive, like the UK and the EU, while others, like the US, are still figuring out the best path forward.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, technology continues to advance, and we see the potential for misuse, like in the Scarlett Johansson case.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important for everyone to be informed about these developments. We can't just leave it to governments and tech companies to sort this out.
Right.
We all need to understand the potential implications.
Okay, so that's a good point. But before we get into what we as individuals can do, I want to go back to the incident with Scarlett Johansson for a moment.
Okay.
You mentioned this wasn't her first encounter with AI misuse. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. So there was this notable incident last year when Johansson threatened legal action against OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT.
Ah, yeah, ChatGPT.
Right.
It's everywhere these days.
It is. It is. They had released a version of ChatGPT with a voice option that sounded a lot like Scarlett Johansson.
So they essentially cloned her voice
Yeah, basically.
without her permission.
That's right.
That's wild.
And Johansson saw this as a pretty clear violation of her rights and a dangerous precedent for AI.
I can see why she'd be upset.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if your voice was suddenly being used to promote things you don't even support.
Exactly.
Or saying things you never would.
That's exactly her point. She's trying to raise awareness about how AI could be used to infringe on individual rights and autonomy.
So what happened? Did she actually end up suing them?
Well, they ultimately removed the voice option from ChatGPT.
Okay.
After facing a lot of public backlash and potential legal challenges. But the incident itself really sparked a lot of discussion about the need for clear regulations regarding the use of AI-generated voices and likenesses. Our legal systems haven't really caught up with how fast AI is developing.
Right. So while the immediate problem was solved, it brought up some bigger issues.
Exactly.
And the need for stronger safeguards.
Exactly. And again, this underscores the need for everyone to be informed and engaged. We can't just wait for governments and tech companies to figure everything out. We all need to be active participants in shaping the future of AI and how it affects our lives.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. In part one, we talked about AI, deepfakes, and what happened with Scarlett Johansson.
Right.
But I want to shift our focus to the bigger picture.
Okay.
What does this all mean for us? You know, what can we do to protect ourselves and be more active in how this technology is shaped?
Yeah, those are the critical questions.
One thing that really struck me in the first part of our conversation was the idea that we can't always trust what we see and hear online.
Yeah.
I mean, deepfakes can really erode trust in the media and make it so hard to tell what's true and what's not.
It's like we're entering this era of information warfare, where technology can be used to manipulate people and spread all this misinformation.
And it's getting harder to detect.
It is.
It's like a game of cat and mouse, you know, with the creators and those trying to expose them.
That's a great way to put it. And I think it really highlights the importance of critical thinking and media literacy. We need to be more careful about the information we consume.
So always question the source.
Exactly.
Look for evidence. Consider biases.
Right.
So it's about being skeptical, but not totally cynical.
Right.
It's about approaching information with curiosity and a willingness to really dig deeper.
You got it. We can't just passively absorb everything we see.
Right.
We need to be active in verifying that what we see is real and thinking about what it means.
So let's say we're online, we see a video,
All right.
and we're suspicious it might be a deep fake.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that could tip us off? What should we be looking for?
Well, there are a few telltale signs.
Yeah.
But they do get harder to spot as the technology gets better. One thing you might notice is inconsistencies with the lighting or the shadows or reflections.
So if something just looks a little off visually.
They got it. And also, pay attention to facial expressions and body language. Deepfakes sometimes have trouble perfectly replicating all the nuances of human movement.
Like those uncanny valley moments where something looks almost human, but just not quite.
Exactly.
I know what you mean.
Like weird blinking or the lips not quite matching up with the audio.
Okay, good to know. Is the source reliable?
Right. Ask yourself, does this align with other information I know?
Yeah. Okay. Are there tools or resources available to help us verify media online?
There are, and they're becoming really important now with all this misinformation. A lot of organizations are developing sophisticated deepfake detection tech, and some of these are actually available for anyone to use.
Oh, wow.
You can even find browser extensions that can flag potentially fake content.
Okay, so that's good news.
Yeah.
We're not totally powerless in this. There are things we can do to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about how to spot these fakes and be more careful about what we see online. What about the bigger picture? How can we play a role in making sure AI is developed and used ethically?
Well, this is where we need to work together. We need to be demanding transparency from these tech companies. Advocate for ethical guidelines.
Yeah.
Support laws that protect people, but also allow for innovation to happen.
So let's make our voices heard. Contact our representatives.
Exactly.
Hold these companies accountable.
Yes. Be an active citizen, not just standing by and watching.
It's interesting how this all ties back to Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
Using her platform to speak out against these issues, advocating for more transparency.
Absolutely.
She's a great example of being proactive.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see.
But it's not just about celebrities, right? We can all do something.
Exactly. Every little bit helps.
Even just having conversations like this with friends and family can help raise awareness.
Right. The more people we have who understand this stuff, the better.
So we talked about being critical of what we see, staying informed about AI, and advocating for its responsible development.
Right.
Are there any other specific things we can do to protect ourselves?
One simple thing is to just be mindful of your digital footprint.
Okay.
The more you share online, the more data there is out there for these AI systems to learn from and maybe even exploit.
Be aware of what we post, what we share, and who we share it with.
Exactly. And it's also a good idea to go into your privacy settings on social media and other platforms and just make sure you understand how your data is being used.
It's almost like we need a new set of rules for how we behave online, how we share information.
Like a digital code of conduct.
Yeah.
Be mindful, discerning, and proactive.
So take ownership of our digital lives, be informed, and advocate for our rights online.
Precisely. And remember that the choices we make today will have a huge impact on the future of AI and how it affects us.
Well, that's something to think about.
It is.
So we talked about being critical consumers of information, advocating for responsible AI, being careful about what we share online.
Right.
What about the darker side of AI?
Right.
I mean, we focused on deepfakes, but AI can be used for all sorts of bad things, right?
Sadly, yes. AI could be used for things like phishing scams, cyber attacks, spreading propaganda, and even controlling weapons.
It's like something out of a movie.
I know, it can be scary to think about.
Yeah.
But we're not powerless. We need to understand the risks, but also remember that we can shape how this technology is used.
So how do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we prevent AI from being used against us?
Well, for one thing, we need to put a lot of effort into creating strong security systems to prevent them from being hacked or manipulated.
So building in security from the very beginning.
Yeah, making sure these systems are secure and ethical right from the start.
I got it.
And we also need to be working together as a global community to figure out safety and ethical standards.
So this isn't just about individual countries.
No, we need to work together because the stakes are just too high.
We need to make sure AI is a force for good.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a great transition into our next topic.
Okay.
The global response to AI.
That's right.
We mentioned it briefly before, but I want to dive a bit deeper. Some countries are more proactive than others. Let's start with the proactive ones, like the UK and the EU.
Okay.
Tell us more about their initiatives.
Sure. The UK has been focusing on AI in advertising, as we discussed.
Right.
They're requiring companies to clearly disclose when they use deepfakes, and they're studying how AI is affecting the economy.
So trying to stay ahead of the game.
Yes.
What about the EU?
They're aiming for a comprehensive legal framework for AI.
Okay.
Regulations on things like data privacy, bias in algorithms, transparency and accountability. They want to create this system of trustworthy AI.
It sounds like they're really considering every angle.
Yes, trying to find a balance between encouraging innovation but also protecting people's rights.
What a challenge.
It is.
We talked earlier about how the U.S. has been slower to enact laws.
Right.
Any movement there?
There has been some progress. The government has released reports and frameworks on responsible AI. And there have been some discussions in Congress.
So they know it's important.
They do.
Well, what's the holdup on those regulations?
Well, there's worry that strict rules would hurt innovation and make U.S. tech companies less competitive.
Okay, yeah.
And then there's the whole issue of free speech and how to balance that with regulation.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly.
Innovation, individual rights, protecting against harm.
Yeah, and there's the question of who should be in charge of regulating AI, the government, industry, or both.
So many things to consider.
There are.
But at least people are talking about it.
That's true. It's a good first step. The more we talk about this, the better prepared we'll be as a society.
Okay, so before we move on, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
Given the potential for good and bad, what responsibility do we have to make sure AI is used ethically?
Wow, that's a deep question. The choices we make today will have consequences for a long time.
And we'll keep exploring those choices in the final part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our final part of this deep dive into AI and deepfakes. It's been quite a journey.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from Scarlett Johansson to how countries are responding to AI. But one thing keeps coming back to me.
What's that?
Just the sheer scale of it all. I mean, we've talked about deepfakes.
Yeah.
But AI is already everywhere. Healthcare, finance, even driving our cars. It just feels like it's moving so fast.
It is evolving rapidly, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's hard to know what to even expect next.
It's natural to feel a bit of both excitement and, maybe a little apprehension.
Right.
It has this enormous potential to solve problems and make our lives better, but there are definitely risks we need to think about.
And that's what I keep coming back to, finding that balance, embracing the good parts of AI, but also acknowledging the potential downside.
It's a real balancing act.
It is.
Yeah.
So how do we walk that tightrope?
Carefully, I think.
Right.
With open discussion and a willingness to adapt as things change. It's not about being afraid of AI. It's about approaching it cautiously, with knowledge, and making sure it develops in a way that aligns with our values as a society.
Okay, so let's talk about those values.
Mm-hmm.
What are the ethical principles that should guide how we develop and use AI? We've mentioned a few.
Mm-hmm.
Transparency, accountability, fairness.
Yes, those are all crucial.
What else should we be considering?
Well, I think we also need to think about the big picture impact on society.
Okay.
How will it change things like employment?
Yeah, that's a big one.
What about privacy and our rights? How can
Yeah.
we make sure it's used to promote equality and justice?
These are some tough questions.
They are. And it shows that this is bigger than just technology. It's a social, political, and ethical issue all rolled into one.
Exactly. So how do we even begin to answer those questions?
Well, I think it's crucial to involve a wide range of people in these discussions.
Cool.
Not just the tech experts, but ethicists, social scientists, people who make policy, community leaders.
And everyone has a voice.
Exactly. AI is going to touch all of our lives. So we all should have a say in how it develops and how it's used.
It can't just be decided by a small group of people.
Right. We need to avoid that echo chamber effect. It has to be a truly democratic process that reflects everyone's needs.
Okay, so we need a balanced approach, ethical guidelines, and everyone needs a seat at the table. But let's bring it back down to the individual. What can each of us do in our daily lives to navigate this new world?
Well, first and foremost, I think we all need to educate ourselves about AI.
Okay.
The more we understand how it works, what it can do, both good and bad,
Yeah.
the better decisions we'll make and the better we can advocate for its responsible development.
Knowledge is power, right?
It really is. And there's so much information available these days. Online courses, documentaries, books, even podcasts.
Yeah, ours included.
Exactly. There's really no excuse for not taking the time to learn about this stuff, especially with how much it's affecting our world.
And this isn't just for tech people, right?
Absolutely not.
Everyone needs to understand the basics of AI, whatever their background is.
Everyone. It's going to touch all of our lives in some way, so we all need to be informed.
Right. And that brings us to another point we made earlier, being critical about the information we come across.
Yes, that's more important now than ever.
With deepfakes and all the AI-generated stuff out there.
It's crucial. Question the source, look for evidence, be aware of bias. It's a skill that will serve you well in the future.
So educate ourselves, be critical of information, anything else.
Well, we've mentioned it before, but it's worth repeating. Be mindful of your digital footprint.
Right.
The more we share online, the more data is out there for AI to learn from and maybe even use in ways we don't expect.
Be selective about what we post.
Exactly, and who we share it with.
It's like a whole new way of thinking about our online lives.
It is like a form of digital citizenship.
You need to be responsible online, just like we are offline.
Precisely. And part of being responsible is standing up for our rights in the digital world. We need to push for regulations that protect our privacy, our data, and our freedom of speech, even in the age of AI.
So contact our representative support organizations working on these issues.
Yes.
Make our voices heard.
Absolutely. Every voice matters.
So to recap, we need to educate ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Be critical thinkers, be mindful of what we share online,
Right.
and advocate for our rights.
It's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's also encouraging to realize that we actually have a lot of power in this situation. We're not just sitting back and watching this happen.
You're right. We're shaping the future of AI with every choice we make.
And that's a great message to end on. The future of AI is not set in stone. It's something we're all creating together through the choices we make, the actions we take, and the conversations we have. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into AI and deepfakes. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, maybe even a little inspiring. And for our listeners, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep talking about these issues. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.